Angela Hart. Welcome to the Heart of New York show. We're filming a series of shows about senior care, and so I've invited some panel members to share with the viewers a little bit about advanced directives and what that means for people with loved ones who need advanced directives, and also about short-term discharge planning. And so I'm going to have my guests introduce themselves to you, tell you what they do, and then we'll open up the discussion. Starting on my right, please.
Thank you. Hello. My name is Rosemarie Mandart-Murray. I am the Outreach Director / Coordinator for Brooklyn and Manhattan for Silver Lake Specialized Care Center.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's good to have you back on the show, Rosemarie.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
And you?
Hi, how are you? My name is Rimma Geyman. I am the Director of Social Service at Haim Solomon Nursing Home in Brooklyn.
Welcome. Very good to have you here. And so we've invited the panelists to talk about different senior care issues. And I'm wondering, to begin with, Rimma, can you tell us about short-term rehab? What's involved with that? How does one apply for it or get the services of short-term rehab? How does it work?
So usually when we're talking about someone that is in short-term rehab or about to go into short-term rehab, we're talking about those patients that are in the hospital and they are either after surgery or something's going on where they are not ready to be discharged back into the community. And so they go into a skilled nursing facility, and in that skilled nursing facility, they receive skilled nursing care, rehabilitation, after which they are ready to go back into the community, and we do discharge planning with them.
And what do you mean when you say discharge planning? What kind of services do you help seniors with in terms of planning out what happens when they get home?
Well, social service in skilled nursing facilities, when we're talking about discharge planning, we're talking about making sure that they go home safely. And so basically it's everything that the patients need to be home, whether it's DME, which is durable medical equipment, home care services, visiting nurse services. We don't usually do a lot of community services, but we put the residents and the families in contact with community agencies that can set them up with Meals on Wheels and things like that.
So as a social worker, what are some of the issues that you deal with families when they first get to a typical facility? What should someone expect? Speak to the viewers as a social worker that experiences this all the time.
Well, coming into a nursing home is difficult for anyone. Just the idea of being in a nursing home is scary. And so when someone is admitted, social service comes in usually on the same day of admission or next day, depending on when they came into the facility. And we do a brief introduction. We explain to them what it means to be in a rehab facility, what the plan is. We talk about the different programs that we have available and basically give them an idea of what's to come. And so that in itself gets them accustomed to being in a facility, not being at home, and it makes it easier for them. And then, you know, they proceed with whatever it is that's happening. And
great. So are there any misconceptions that people have about short-term rehabs that you would like to set the record straight about?
Oh, goodness. Yes, there's a lot of misinformation that comes from, you know, whatever they hear in the community, also in the hospitals. When they are coming in, you know, they're being told one thing, and then when they enter the facility, a lot of times it's a completely different experience. And so...
Like what? Be specific.
Oh, okay.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Length of stay is a major one. Sometimes you hear that you're going to be in the facility for 2 months, whereas you're only there for, 4 weeks, or vice versa. You're being told that you're going to be there for 1 week, and then your rehab is actually taking longer than expected, and so you end up staying longer. Also, a lot of times we're faced with benefits, Social Security, Medicaid, someone that's receiving public benefits, what happens when you're in the facility, and exactly, what they can do to maintain their benefits.
Something else came to mind right away because of our geography. The viewers that are watching might see this in any of the boroughs.
All 5.
And exactly. And borough-wide, there are different types of organizations that help seniors in each individual borough. And I bring that up because people's expectations when they come in, social work teams, when you use the word we, it's the collective social work team. It's their job to help the patient, the resident, while they're in the rehab. But from day one, they have their eye on the prize, being you're going to go home, hopefully, and what's going to happen to you then. And unfortunately, the length of stay issue is, it's a lot shorter than most people think. They're looking for something, and then it's this long a stay, and then it might be this long. And that's just from the experience in the field in general.
But how does that, why did you say it depends on what borough? What
Well,
am I
because
missing?
of when you're going home, the types of agencies you might get might be specific. The agencies might be specific. New York City agencies are citywide, borough-wide. But Staten Island has different agencies, Brooklyn has different agencies. So a good social worker and social service people are excellent. I just said this earlier, I never met a social worker I didn't like. Truth be told,
true.
they have to know what they're going to be helping with from the beginning, so they know what the end game is.
Well, so I'll be honest with you, that's one of the hardships that we have when we have someone that is from a different state, or say, for example, after the rehab is finished, they're going to be staying with a family member that lives out of state. That doesn't necessarily mean that we don't set them up with services. We just have to be more creative. So this is where Google comes into play.
Yes,
and,
yes.
and you try to find what's in that state to make sure that you do get them set up with the services they need.
And so that comes into the discharge planning
That's
aspect
part of
to
discharge
it.
planning, absolutely. Just because someone, for example, is going to New Jersey and you don't necessarily know the different agencies that are in New Jersey, you have to do your research to make sure that you find what's appropriate for them in that state.
So how long have you been a social worker?
Overall, I started social service in hospitals, so I did discharge planning in the hospital, so I want to say it's been close to 7 years.
And what did you do after that job?
I transitioned into the nursing home where I was a floor social worker, and now I'm a director.
And what made you decide to become a social worker? Let the viewers know, because we, as Rosemarie pointed out, social workers are very giving people and they're underpaid, in my opinion. So what gave you the idea that you wanted to become a social worker?
Well, when I was in school, when I was getting my degree, I had a part-time position at a nonprofit organization that provided financial assistance to needy Holocaust survivors. And that, is close to my heart because my grandmother was a Holocaust survivor. And so when I was working for the nonprofit, I had a very good relationship with the executive director, who was basically trying to get me to explore my passion and to figure out what I want to do with my life. And, well, here I am.
Oh, my goodness. What an experience that was. What kind of services did you provide to the Holocaust survivors?
So it was mostly financial assistance. They were an organization that would give financial assistance for food subsidies, for holidays, because we know for Passover, for example, it's very expensive to purchase all of the food that's kosher for Passover. For Hanukkah, so for the high holidays, also rent subsidies, things like that. Whatever the need was, they would provide the finances necessary.
That's fantastic. That's great. So that was quite an experience. And how did you become a director already? You're sort of young, and you must have really excelled in certain areas.
I had very good people helping me along the way. The director that hired me and trained me, she believed in me and she pushed me, and so she said that this is where I'm meant to be.
I believe that. Don't you think so?
Because social workers certainly do not do it for the fame, the glory, or the money, which we discussed earlier. It is really thankless, but social workers are very loving and very giving people.
So I'm so glad
Thank
to
you.
have you on the show. Thank you for
I'm
coming
very
on.
happy to be here.
It's a privilege to have you here, and I've gotten have formed a very deep respect for social workers because my mother-in-law is in a nursing home. I dealt with a lot of social workers, and I found that to be true as well, Rosemarie.
Absolutely.
Rosemarie, speak to the viewers about advanced directives. What does the term mean, and how can you educate them?
I'll try my best. Today I did a little bit of homework because a lot of times we do use Google, Wikipedia, et cetera, for our information. But I think one of the best quotes ever, and I got this correctly, Benjamin Franklin said that those who fail to plan really plan to fail.
Oh, I
Now,
love
Winston
that.
Churchill said that those who don't learn from their past mistakes are bound to repeat them. And I think that's very true in healthcare. The average person spends more time on Yelp looking for a restaurant or on Google Earth looking for a location for real estate than they do on healthcare or what they would like for themselves healthcare-wise. We live in a very, very intelligent society. At the click of a mouse, you can get your information. That's pretty darn fast. And yet, as organized and as high-functioning as we are, we have the right to communicate our wishes. We have the ability to communicate. That's what humans all share. Even if physiologically you have no sound in your voice, you can use an augmented communication device. You can use American or International Sign Language. These are all ways of communication. But what if what you want and what you hold dearest to you, you are no longer able to communicate? That is very sad. So in advance of you wanting or needing that, you have the ability to make what is called an advanced directive. Now, an advanced directive is very simply said. It is a directive by which a person specifically can allow someone else to know their wishes for healthcare issues about what they do want, but even more or most importantly, what they don't want. That is what an advanced directive is by very nature.
So what wouldn't somebody want, for instance?
All right, well, I'm going to go into that in a moment.
Okay.
But there are different kinds of advanced directives, and if I can continue telling the viewers a little bit about
Please.
those, there was an advent of advanced directives. They came in a very interesting way. The first one in 1969 was called the living will, and everyone knows the word will, what a will is, will and testament. It was used for property and finance. It allowed you, the person, while you were alive, to give and to make your needs or interests known after you are dead. You can no longer speak your wishes, so you willed it to someone else. Well, in 1969, the Bar Association and the National Law Board looked at these things and decided that since a will is enacted after you are dead, they felt the person had the same right to say what they wanted while they were living.
Of course.
And so they called it the living will. That was in 1969. Fast forward a lot of years, and the Patient Self-Determination Act, PSDA, was enacted in 1991 to allow every patient to self-determine what they wanted. And that really is very specific state by state. And that's when you get into what you do want and what you don't want. In New York State, they recognize what's called the healthcare proxy and living will. Now, advanced directives are considered legal. They are legal documents. And in the United States of America, they are by themselves a legal document. But in foreign countries, they're called a persuasive document, allowing someone to persuade a court, a judicial system, to show what they would have wanted. But it's legal in itself. The United States recognizes it as legal. But different states take different, judicial justice with the wording of the item. But a healthcare proxy in New York and a living will in New York are both recognized.
Interesting. Tell us more.
Well, as far as what people want and what they don't want, the problem with the original living will was it was somewhat vague. And it didn't really necessarily mean that a person could enact something specific. So the word proxy means proxy. You're giving your proxy to someone. In voting, happens in voting organizations all the time. Well, if you designate someone to be your proxy, they then enact your wishes when you cannot. In the case of accident, injury, loss of mental capacity, which is a whole nother issue altogether. But generally, the person you select is the most important decision because that person, you have to trust them. They're going to make your wishes known. But that's where the proxy is further enhanced by your ability to write specifically detailed instructions as to what you would like and what you would not like done. And that is huge. That was a very big change in the way they viewed proxy because you can specifically say things about issues that are going to affect you.
Like what? Tell us.
For example, hydration, being artificially hydrated. If you're no longer able to tell people that you're thirsty, they will hydrate you, either because you want it, or you can say, I don't want to be artificially hydrated. I don't want to have artificial nutrition. You can write something like, if I am in a permanent vegetative state, I do not wish any means to prolong my life. However, statistically, I did some more homework, 25 to 55% of Americans die in skilled nursing facilities. Now, the word not
what percentage?
25 to 55% of deaths occur because of a chronic illness for which they need to be in a skilled nursing facility. 1.4 million people are so frail they need a feeding tube inserted to keep them alive, quote unquote, and 2 million of them have been in nursing homes. That's a huge number of people.
Yes.
Now, 96% of Americans say, when asked on surveys, that they would have not wanted any, and the word any is capitalized, aggressive treatment. And yet, only 41% of Americans have enacted a healthcare proxy. So those other 55%, if you do the math, are getting treated against what they would have wanted. That's not to say they're not getting treated, because they're being treated well. Skilled nursing facilities, hospitals, they're prolonging life. That is a physician's Hippocratic oath. First, do no harm. And as such, they are propagating life. But if the person doesn't want that, the healthcare proxy living will, and in other states, different names, allows them to tell what they would want and what they wouldn't want. And that's very big.
Well, so in the nursing homes, advance directives are huge, especially when you're talking about these end-of-life issues. And so as social workers, one of the things that we do upon admission is we have the discussion about advance directives. It is part of our introduction. Hello, how are you? Do you have any advance directives? It really is the
Yes.
second
Yes.
line that you say, because it's so important for that reason. And what we try to do is we try to educate everyone about the importance of advance directives. If they have any advance directives, we want to make sure that they are documented, that we have a copy, or we ask if they wish to enact another one. And in the absence of the advance directives, I just wanted to say, I'm sure you have a lot of information
Yes.
about that,
Yes.
but we have families that are saying, well, you know, we never thought that this would happen, and we thought we had more time to plan, but I don't have a healthcare proxy. We do not have any advance directives. And so we ask them if they're willing to sign a public health law surrogate form, which is basically their way of saying, I, as the family member, take responsibility for making medical decisions for my loved one, at which point they sign. We have that on file, and that is considered an advance directive in a nursing home.
And that really was
Excellent.
a huge change. That was a huge change. And the social work collective, and I use that term because you say we, all social workers, if you go into a hospital for anything at all, pre-surgical testing, you're going in to pay a bill. I mean, I've seen this in the financial offices. They have a healthcare proxy on a placard standing up with a note telling you about what a healthcare proxy is. And part of that education process started, interestingly enough, part of the New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation, Rimma and I were talking about this earlier, when I worked at Bellevue Hospital in New York City.
Wow.
And the reason why it's interesting is in 1991, when the Self-Determination Act came out, one of the first things we had to do as a public hospital was to make sure that everyone got a health care proxy, understood what an advance directive was, and put that in their chart, their record. And that's the same, you know, Silver Lake, Haim Solomon, it's in a person's chart. If they have one, it's got to be in their record. Well, at Bellevue Public Hospital, 24/7 admissions, what happens at 2 a.m. when someone's admitted? You can't have that conversation with the person at 2 a.m. necessarily unless the team on duty knows what to do. So we formulated at Bellevue Hospital a tutorial video that explained healthcare proxy and what it meant to the patient, what it meant to the family. But at the time, that was all they had. This public advocate form, surrogate form, really came about because of all the people that say, oh my gosh, mom is in a coma, we didn't think about it, because people think that if you sign a form, something bad is going to happen to you. If you plan your funeral, you're going to die. And that's human nature. 37 years of hearing it, you get to know what people are thinking. And as far as the public and the servants, the public servants, the social work servants, the discharge planners, I mean, case management, this is fundamental. This is not, let's throw all the balls up in the air and see what sticks. This is going to affect what happens to you when you can no longer speak.
This is so important. And I learned something at the Senior Umbrella Network of Brooklyn, affectionately known as Sun-B, which is opening here on Staten Island.
Yes.
Viewers,
Excited.
We are very excited about this. In fact, we're having our first meeting, and by the time of this airing, it will have already occurred. But please go to the Senior Umbrella Network of Brooklyn website find out the contact information, and if you're in the senior care field, do join us. We're going to have the Staten Island division. There's going to be a lot of participation, it's especially going to be good because what was the name of the agency that closed a few years ago?
The Staten Island Interagency Council for the Aging.
And now there's a vacuum, and the Senior Umbrella Network has been around for over 15 years servicing Brooklyn, and now we're going to have this group here, and I'm part of it, and I'm proud to be part of it, and so is Rosemarie, because she works with the Staten Island Home here. Of course, if you want to come join us, you're very welcome. But what I learned at one of those meetings, where a guest speaker came to speak about advanced directives, I found out that you can we hear the expression force feeding, and we think of intravenous. But there's another thing that happens, that there's some kind of physiological phenomenon where you can touch someone's chin and they open their mouth. And so then you would be feeding them. And so here you are. I've seen this situation go on in the nursing homes, and I'm thinking that someone's just, feeding, helping the person. But they would not be eating but for someone doing this little tap thing to the chin. And I thought, I don't want that. And so I have to tell you, I don't have an advance directive. My husband and I don't have one. Where do we get one, and how do we specify things like this?
That's a great question, because a lot of people don't realize. You can go on the New York State website. There's an organization called Aging with Dignity that has what's called the third generation, because as they've grown in popularity, they've had to kind of change in order to meet the needs of the person.
Excuse me, what do you mean they've changed to meet the needs of the person? What do you mean by that?
All right, the changes of the form itself came into being because sometimes just writing your proxy was not sufficient. Giving someone your proxy was not sufficient. So an organization called Aging with Dignity has a form, and I urge viewers to look it up. It's called the 5 Wishes. You might have seen this, but it's the 5 Wishes form. And because the top 2 items are the 2 items in a healthcare proxy, with a healthcare proxy, it's really a good thing to have. The first item says you write down the person that you want to have as your proxy. Mm-hmm. The second thing, you write the kind of treatment you want and what you do not want. The third item is the comfort level you want to have, and that plays into palliative care and hospice, which is huge. The fourth thing is how do you want to be treated and where do you want to be treated? It's very big. And the fifth one really is not a proxy item, but I like it. What I want my loved ones to know. Because sometimes you can't say what you want, and then they'll never have a reason to know what you thought. For the most part, though, it's usually kind things that you want them to know.
What do you mean by that?
For example, you want them to know that you appreciated the fact that they're having this decision, that you're giving them your proxy, and you're trusting they're going to do what you want for them. It's not the time for discussion or debate. By the time they're enacting this, they're seeing your wishes. You can't speak anymore. So you want them to know exactly what it is they need to know. And that is really huge, because in New York State, healthcare proxy is the wonderful tool. It's a legal document as such. It is accepted as a legal document as such. It is not necessarily needing to be notarized. It can be signed,
and
it has to be witnessed. It's universal.
It can be used anywhere. It can be used in a nursing home, doctor's office, hospital. You can travel with it. You don't need to enact a new healthcare proxy every time.
And so how does this come into play, these kinds of documents, with people that have been admitted to a short-term facility, as an example? Have you run into these documents in respect to the treatment they get there even?
Yes, absolutely. Because if you have someone that's coming in that's alert and oriented and they can make their needs known, the healthcare proxy really is just there to make sure that if, God forbid, something happens, and we need someone to make decisions, we have that person. However, a lot of times you have someone coming in that already lost their capacity to make medical decisions for themselves, and they have this proxy, the family members coming in and saying, this was enacted a couple of years ago. I'm the daughter, the healthcare proxy, we make a copy of it for our records, and then we go to them for all decision making. But the one thing that I do want to stress, and I'm sure this is something that you've come across in your facility as well, that when it comes to advanced directives and capacity, there's really a very thin line. So you want to make sure that you don't necessarily go to the healthcare proxy if the patient has the ability to make decisions. And it's very important because you want to make sure that in that end of life, they still have dignity and they still have the capacity to make their own decisions. If they're able to make those decisions, you want to give them that power. You want to empower them. And so if you feel that someone is really not able to make decisions, usually we recommend that a psychiatrist come to do an evaluation and evaluate them for decision-making capacity, at which point they will give you guidance, and then you can say, okay, from now on, we go to the healthcare proxy, so that healthcare proxy gets activated.
That's exactly right. It is activated in the event the person is not capable.
Yes.
For whatever reason, could be cognitive decline, and that's true because Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and all of its umbrella diseases, you might be able to be talking, but you cannot make those decisions, and that's a really important thing.
Thank you so much. So we have about 2 minutes left, and I wanted to know, Rima, was there anything else that you wanted to share that would be helpful to the viewers to know about short-term rehab or discharge planning in particular?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on the show. It was a pleasure. And I do want to say that being in a rehab facility is really not scary. It's really, I feel that short-term rehab is really a place where you can go to feel better, to get back on your feet, to get back to that prior level of functioning. And social service is huge. And so I do urge that if any of you are in a rehab facility, in a skilled nursing facility, that you speak to your social worker, you see what services are available with regards to home care, with regards to managing and taking care of your needs so that, you don't end up back in the hospital.
There is a real push now when people have entered rehabs to get them equal to or better than the condition they were in before entering the rehab, where years ago it was just a natural progression that next they go to the nursing home. Now there's a push to bring them back home, right?
Yes.
And to get stronger and better. Did you have a closing thought before we have the real closing?
Yes, just that everyone should know that a healthcare proxy is only good if people know you have it. It has to be known to the people that are your proxy. Make sure they have a copy for themselves. Make sure you have a copy. I tell people to put it on their refrigerator in a plastic protector, because if someone comes to your home and you're not conscious, they always look on the refrigerator for phone numbers and lists of medications.
Viewers, did you hear that? Put these important numbers and directives on your or your loved one's refrigerator. That's the perfect place.
In plain sight.
I'm doing something different today. Thank you, panelists, for attending
Thank you
and
for having us.
participating. How informative this has been. And I have the pleasure of having a guest on the show that has a beautiful voice. And there's a certain song that I heard her sing, and she's going to sing a few bars from it. And this is how we're closing. And thank you for watching. Rosemarie.
Thank you very much. Smile though your heart is breaking. Smile even though it's aching. When there are clouds in the sky, you'll get by. If you smile through the pain and sorrow, smile and maybe tomorrow, you'll know that life is still worthwhile if you just smile. Thank you very much. Everybody should smile. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
That was great.
Absolutely terrific.